Let's take a look at both the teacher and student settings in Newrow. So you can see at the top here that I have a toolbar of different tools that I can use. And sometimes I'll come in and it's not there. If it's not there and you need it, you can click on this pencil tool here and it will show back up. Students can also zoom in and out on things and can click that pencil tool as well. Also, another little thing that sometimes happens is when we talk about some of the tools up here, if any of the tools are not showing, you may just need to change your browser zoom settings. So you may need to zoom out to say 80 or 90% in order for the whole landscape view to be showing on the screen. Something to keep in mind. Now, these are pretty self-explanatory, going back and forward and being able to use the arrows, the pointer tool. This is a pencil tool, a highlighter tool, an eraser tool. A text box is the capital T. If you need to add a text box, you can click on that. You can do both a filled and unfilled shape here. So if you click the checkbox for filled and you can select the color, it will give you a specific color. If you want to change the thickness, you can do that here. Thick, medium, and thin. These are your color choices over here. And then this right here is for adding movable pieces, which we will get to later. If that's not showing, make sure you check your zoom setting on your browser. And again, zoom out to 80 or 90%, and this should be showing so that it fits in the landscape shape right here that we have and within those size constraints. For some reason, sometimes that happens. I am using it on my second monitor right now, so that makes it a little bit easier because the screen is larger. Let's take a look at some of the other settings that you can change within Newrow. So when you go up here to the gear, you can, of course, again, look at your device settings. The access and security. So the room can be locked for everyone but registered users. They're going to the waiting room as they come in. Everyone but instructors and admins, students and guests are referred to the waiting room. So this is a setting that I would have set, and then you can unlock the room automatically when the session starts. You can also unlock it at any time, and I'll show you in just a moment where that is. Then there is also a room mode. So if you have more than 50 people, it's suggested you use the webinar mode. Normal classes, we're using the virtual classroom, of course, and that is so that we can allow for the most interactive classes possible. There is a standard mute where students can unmute themselves at any time, sort of like in Zoom, when you mute them and they can turn their microphones right back on. That would be a standard mute. Or a strong mute. So strong mute means that we need to unmute them. They can't just unmute themselves at any time. This would be usually the preferred setting for a classroom. The default permissions, these are the things that you want the students to be able to do. So if you want them all to be able to draw on the whiteboard, they can do that. Now they can all draw on the whiteboard, and they can only delete their own writing. So they can draw or they can scribble. You can delete it if they are scribbling on something you don't want them to be, or if they're writing something that's off topic or you didn't want them to write about. You can delete it, but they can't delete another student's work. Play shared files. This is if you wanted students to play files from the playlist and control playback on stage. So as a teacher, normally you are going to do this. Share their screen. If you want everybody to be able to share their screen, you could select that. You probably don't. I'll show you how to set it individually. And you could also allow them to write notes collaboratively in the class notes tool, which again, you probably want to limit unless that's something that you want to be able to do in your course or you're working with a very small group of students. The participants list, if you want them to be able to see who's in the classroom, you can do that. You can sort it by alphabet or time joined. The quick poll settings. Quick poll is another thing that we can do. And this would be to hide choices anonymous. This would mean that you couldn't even see the stats in your session stats. And I will show you in a separate video how to pull up session stats. I have no idea why you would want to use an anonymous mode, because as a teacher, you are only going to see the students' responses anyway. The students aren't going to see each other's responses unless you publish the overall class responses, but that doesn't have individual names attached to it. So I'm not sure why you would use anonymous, but it is there. Your target audience, we usually leave this as all participants, but the triggering host will be asked to answer the quick poll. You can also set it to non-moderators only if you really don't want an answer from your co-teacher or an observer in the room. Now the chat settings. The chat settings, you can allow students to group chat, and that shows down here on the bottom here in the chat box. That's the room chat button. It does move sort of quickly, so if you are not prepared to monitor it, then you may want to limit that at first until you're a little bit more comfortable in Newrow. But that is a place where they can share ideas and give their impressions of things or provide some anecdotal responses. The ask questions, that's when they can submit questions to you in the questions and answer. That is down here. Those will show only to you. You can reply all with your answer if they ask a good question and you wanted your response to be seen by everyone. This start one-on-one chats is probably something that you would not want to use in the classroom, so you want to make sure that this is not checked. This would allow students to initiate one-on-one chats with each other, meaning they can talk basically behind your back. They can say things that you cannot see. They can send each other links to things that you may not want them sending. So if for the time being, unless Newrow changes that about the one-on-one chats and allows the teacher to be able to see what is being written, we leave that off. For moderation, you can also clear chats at the end of the session automatically so that when they come in the next day, that chat history is clear. You're welcome to do that as well. The browser focus, we don't mess around too much with this because it just is not a perfect science, right? So browser focus means that if they are not focused exactly on your Newrow browser, their Newrow browser, then you could have it show alerts on their webcams or in the participants list. And it can be a nice tool for making sure that students are on task. However, if you have a student that is just simply looking back to the lesson or looking to their schedule for the day, maybe is a little anxious about the time, wants to see what time their next class starts and things like that, it can be sort of distracting, and it can be a way that, especially for you with a second monitor, if you're using a second monitor, it will show that you aren't focused on the browser because it won't pick up that second monitor focus. So just something to keep in mind. I usually leave both of those off, but that's something that you can think about if you're interested in that. So those are the general room settings and the things that you can do for students as a whole. Now there are also some tools up here. So you can enable whiteboard for everyone and disable the whiteboard for everyone. You can disable chat right here and enable chat right here. You can mute all the webcams and you can mute all the microphones right here. And those settings that we just looked at are the global settings. So you could do the mute where they could turn it right back on, or you could do the mute where they have to wait until you turn it back on or ask. So if you mute all the microphones and you have it set so that they can't automatically turn them right back on, then they won't be able to turn their microphone right back on and speak until you turn it back on or you ask them to raise their hand and answer a question. So those are the settings there. Then with your individual participants, you will have individual tools. So you'll be able to, when you have a student here, you'll be able to individually turn off and on their chat, webcam, and microphone right here. You can also turn off their whiteboard privileges. So you can do that individually by clicking on the participants, next to the participants, those tools, or you can do it as a whole up top here. You can also search if you have a number of students in the class and you can't quickly find, but you the student that you're looking for and you don't want to scroll through, you can start typing their name and then use that as well. There, they can raise their hand. Students can raise their hand. If you want to clear all hands, you can do that here. When they raise their hand, they will pop up to the top and they'll have a little hand raise icon. If you simply click on that, it will lower their hand as well. So those are some of the participant individual and group settings. Here are the chats. So the questions and answers, those would come directly to this spot here. You can always click this arrow to toggle back. The room chat, this may be where you're monitoring. You can quickly switch to questions and answers and moderator chat right here. You can also clear all of the chats right there. So those are some different settings in Newrow. In some of the other videos, if you're interested, we're going to talk about those movable pieces and polling tools and things like that. Oh, the one other thing I did want to mention is if you want to unlock the door or lock the door at any time, that setting is right here.